Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look at ways that we can come together and work together to more effectively serve Christ. Today we have Pedro Garcia with us. He is with Ask and Wonder. You might have seen him on the web. You might have seen his podcast. He's quite an interesting fellow, known first for playing the saxophone, right,
Yeah.
Pedro?
Yeah.
And so he is here with us today. He's going to talk to us about how he came to know the Lord. He grew up in Spain as an atheist and came to know Christ from that. So, Pedro, welcome to the Better Together podcast.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for having me here, Eddie.
It's
Thank
so
you.
good to have you. So it was kind of a journey, wasn't it, from
Yeah.
where you were at to where you're at today?
Yeah.
Tell us how it all began.
Well, it started with, Spain is a multicultural country, and
Yes.
there's a little bit of syncretism with the Catholic faith and a lot of superstition.
Yes.
And I grew up in a Catholic kind of nominalist family, but no one really took it very seriously. Then my uncle and my cousin are Jehovah's Witnesses. And then I have a brother that believes, which is okay, by the way, that believes that there are other civilizations out there in UFOs. So this means that I grew up in a family that is kind of rich in terms of,
Different
different viewpoints about reality.
Worldviews and all.
Yeah. So, and since I was a kid, Eddie, I've always had very, very deep questions about reality, always.
Yes.
And if I hadn't started my career as a musician, I'm sure that I would have started a career as a philosopher. I love philosophy. But so what happened was that when I was 13, I left my nominalist faith, my Catholic faith. The reason was because I was at a Catholic school and they didn't welcome questions.
Yes.
That doesn't say anything about Catholicism in general, just my situation there. So, my questions were not answered. So I said, this is all about God. I don't care anymore about this.
Mm-hmm.
I was an atheist, but I never got to a point of saying there's nothing. I actually thought that there was something, but something that was more impersonal. So, that took me to, years and years living life thinking that all the prerogatives and precepts of my morals context was just made up by culture, society, and there was nothing else there, right? Yeah.
So there you were as far as your worldview goes.
Yes.
At the same time, you were making quite some success professionally, though, weren't you?
Yeah.
And so all this is happening simultaneously.
Yes, and then I started my career as a saxophone player. I really actually wanted to play violin, but there wasn't any room for more violinists in the class. So the teacher said, well, you need to play saxophone. Well, okay. And that went really well. I studied a lot, very responsible kid, always studying. I didn't need anyone to tell me what to do and how to do it. I have that, and which is actually could be a curse as well.
Yeah.
Because people need also to know when to stop and have fun as well. But being that hard on myself in a good sense took me to, create my own music. And then I was a finalist on the TV show Spain's Got Talent, the America's version of it.
Yes.
In 2008. And that
launched you, didn't it?
Yes, that allowed me to travel all around the world, many countries, and meeting many people, worldviews, which Eddie started again. Oh, well, look the way people think here. I met some people. I believe in God. Oh, interesting. Buddhist and this, because I traveled to Japan, many countries all around the world. So that started kind of the conversation.
So as things were still happening in your mind, so to speak, as you're progressing in your career, and lo and behold, you ended up in the United States for some reason. What happened there?
So I was invited to play at the World Saxophone Congress in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
In 2012. And that people knew about me because of the TV appearance. So people were kind of expecting, this guy from Spain is coming just to see what happened. People liked this. People loved this.
Yes.
And then there was the professor, the saxophone professor at MTSU was there. And when I finished the concert, many people approached me, but she approached me and said, Pedro, you should come to the States.
Yes.
You should come and just spend time with my students, and then people know what you do with the saxophone, because the style I was playing is kind of interesting, mixing techniques and stuff. And yeah, I came to the States.
And as an aside, people should probably go on YouTube and take a look at you out there. What is Pedro Saxo, right?
Yeah, that's the name.
And so you should take a look at him, and you should listen. It is pretty cool. For the folks that aren't in the Tennessee area, MTSU is Middle Tennessee State University.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you end up, she recruited you to the United States to some saxophone teaching. And what happened next over here?
That was very interesting. And I'm telling you, Eddie, now that time has passed, now as a follower of Christ, I'm always scared, because although a follower of Christ, I want to be very, I think the word is not strict, but I really want to commit myself to something that is true.
Right.
So I don't want to, I never want to bring any type of weak theology to my conversations. Mm-hmm. But I just cannot do anything else at this point. When I look back at what happened here at the States with me, I mean, that was God.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, that sometimes
it's clear, isn't it?
It's just sometimes. So what happened was, I came here. I never made a living out of playing the saxophone, by the way.
Oh,
ever.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I played here and there, but never made a living. I came to the States, and I was at MTSU teaching students. I was a guest professor. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't making any money. I was just trying to really just see what happens, right?
Right.
And I was teaching. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay, but nothing truly happened that would move my career. Mm-hmm. And then the most unexpected thing, always with God. This is the way it happened. My English, this was 7 years ago, wasn't good at all. I came here, I didn't speak that well. So I said, okay, so if I'm going to be here, nothing is going to happen. At least let me learn English, just to improve my English.
Yeah.
So I went online. This is where everything started. Okay.
Yes.
I went online and I thought, okay, maybe there's a company that's teaching Spanish, with which I can do stuff. So I can teach them how to speak Spanish, and they can teach me English. It's a language exchange. And I sent an email to a company called Spanish Lessons with Emily D. Okay.
Emily D.
Okay. So then Emily answered. I said, well, I'm here. I would like to learn English and all of this. And she answered me, oh, that is fantastic. Come and join us to some of the classes, right? And the first meeting that we had was a pumpkin party. How do you say that? Pumpkin carving party.
Like around
Halloween.
Yes.
Which was interesting because we eat pumpkin. We just don't carve them. It was for me the first cultural.
It was kind of slimy, and what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah. But then Emily was there introducing me to her friends, but all of a sudden she said, Pedro, this is my sister.
Uh-oh.
And I saw Rebecca. I call her Rebecca. And I fell in love.
Yes.
I just fell in love with her. And the way she was treating me, the way she was, the innocence, the patience, the goodness, the purity. It was kind of a shock to me. And then, I started kind of, hanging out with everyone when she was there. And then having conversations with her. I usually go directly to deep stuff. And I one of my questions was, how can you be this nice? And she told me, because of Christ. Pedro, it's because of Christ. And I said, no, that's because you grew up like this. Social, cultural aspects of,
Right.
No, Pedro, Christ. And then, okay, I said, if this is Christ, then let me see how she reacts at certain
certain situations.
And look, I was broken. We can talk about this if you want to, Eddie. My idol was the saxophone.
I see. Yes.
That was where my life, if it goes well, I'm going to be happy. If it doesn't go well, my life doesn't mean anything.
It's your idol, so to speak.
Yes, definitely. And then when I saw that happiness, even though I was an atheist, I thought, okay, even if this is a lie, I want that. I was thinking about it more as a pill.
Right.
Like you go to the doctor, just give him that pill. And I said, okay, if this is true, and I actually trust you because you're a very nice person, well, let me again go back to this. But I don't want to kind of be helped by anyone. I don't want to go to church. Let me read by myself about this and what happened. And here I am.
Wow.
Having an interview
about
with you guys.
Ask and Wonder and all this. It's truly a God thing.
It is,
As you
is.
mentioned we have the Hallmark movies here. And so it's like a real Hallmark movie where everything worked out quite well. Now, I guess you started reading the Bible and you kept challenging Rebecca a bit and then finally committed your life to Christ?
Yeah, it was a process. It was difficult because this process I went through in Spain.
Oh.
Because I went back for 9 months
right,
because of my visa.
Yes.
So I said, I did it there. My friends, all atheists, they couldn't believe that I was reading the Bible. Not in a bad way. They were very good friends. But seriously, man, you're reading that? But
waste of time and all that.
Here's the thing also. Very lucky that Rebecca, my wife.
Yes.
I say Rebecca, she's from Connecticut. She's American. But I call her.
You roll the
Rebecca.
R's.
Yes. So her father, my father-in-law, who passed away 3 years ago, he was a Bible translator.
Oh.
Expert in Aramaic, expert in Hebrew, and expert in Greek.
Wow.
And he translated the Bible by himself for 37 years. It's called the International English Bible.
Yes.
And having someone like him, with a skeptic like me, just asking questions not only if this is true, why sociologically, why this way, that helps a lot.
Oh, yes.
My whole concern was philosophy and science. Because when I read the Sermon of the Mount, reading the Sermon of the Mount, whether you are a Christian or non-Christian, there is something that resonates, vibrates with humanity, no matter who you are. The problem for me was, Eddie, what's happening with science, with philosophy, with history? And the first shock, boom, secular and Christian historians saying that Jesus as a person is a real person. And saying that he didn't exist is saying like the World War II didn't happen.
Right. Right.
And I said, okay, no legend. He was real. What happened? Then I studied about the explosion in the first century of Christianity and the expansion in a culture that wasn't a culture in which Christianity would proliferate.
Right.
You know?
Right.
All of that was fascinating for me. Then philosophy. Many people think philosophy is just it takes you away from Christianity. I mean, I'm sorry. You start from the pre-Socratics, and then you read everyone was talking about something beyond the metaphysics of reality, the unmoved mover with Aristotle, Socrates, Plato talking. Of course, they were not talking about the Christian God, but they were talking about something else, not the secular materialistic worldview that is being pushed nowadays in our secular world. And then, of course, you read the church fathers, Tertullian, and then, I don't know, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Anselm. These thinkers, I mean, philosophy is completely permeated by Christianity. Not in a bad way, but just thinkers saying, let's put away a little bit doctrine and let's let's try to rationalize this. And they did rationalize it. I mean, you can agree with it or not, but and then with science as well, the Royal Society building. How do you say this? Constructed. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Founded in England in the 17th century, even before with scientists that, as C.S. Lewis says, that expect is law in nature. Because
you can see it.
Yeah, because the universe is intelligible, and we have a mind in order to understand this. This whole vision of science being against the Christian worldview, it is such a misconception. So yeah, I saw all of that and I said, okay, so what I'm about to give my life to is not blind faith at all, as John Lennox puts it. He's one of my mentors that I actually got to meet. Professor of mathematics at Oxford University. He says the world is completely rationalized in patterns, mathematical patterns. And the fact that we can understand them, and this is a language that actually you cannot see, but at the same time describes reality. I mean, this is just, I'm sorry. And then, of course, imagine all of that evidence, plus you put on top of that the Sermon of the Mount. I'm sorry. What Jesus was saying there, I want a world that looks that way too.
Right.
It helps also for me to really distinguish, Eddie, what happens at church. I'm talking now as an atheist,
right,
and Christ,
right?
Because of course my expectations were, okay, I think I've become a Christian, right?
Right. Now
I was going to church expecting that people were going to be there just talking about theology and philosophy and enjoying and then no, people. But this is a process for me.
Right.
Was okay. I cannot go to church. For 1 year, I couldn't go to church because my expectations were very high. How can I go to church and people talking about soccer, football, coffee, and what is this? I don't understand. That was my heart. That wasn't. Then when I started, the mind is all good. Intellectual side of things, always good. But the heart is where reality is, and from where reality emerges, according to Christ, and where I realized, of course, it's just people that broken people wanting to
talk, just hang out,
and then I was very lucky. Again, lucky, maybe not God. Again, took me to the Donaldson Fellowship. And Eddie, I cannot seriously. It was in 2 months. I was friends with every single one of the staff.
Oh wow!
Everyone there is, and now I'm part of many groups there that, like in the main core of the church, that have opened their hearts to me. I don't know. Whatever I can do for Christ from now on, I'm going to do it.
And well, it's a wonderful story, and. So let's go back to Rebecca for a bit.
Yes.
Her demeanor, her Christ in her life is what kind of triggered all this. And then there's things happening with you in your mind, and you're looking at science, you're looking at philosophy, you're actually reading the scriptures too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And all this, it's kind of like a developmental, it lasted some time, and and we can hear you, as you describe it, growing in your faith. And what happened to this Rebecca person?
Well, I got married.
so you got married? And
I got married. Was a gift.
Oh, so just the whole life, right?
Oh, so Rebecca, I've been married with her for 6 years now. And I'm telling you, because I think the point is that I know what I have. I read about the testament of Christ in the way he lived his life, and I think that I have someone at home that kind of puts this into practice every day with, of course, mistakes, because she's a human being,
right? And
that, what can I say? I love her with all my heart. It's just, my wife is just such a gift.
So it's a wonderful story. It's a real story. It's a true story. Yeah. There's a couple of things I think all of our listeners can learn from this. Paul talked about, like, if you have a unbelieving husband, an unbelieving wife, how we live Christ out before them. And it sounds like just in meeting Rebecca, she lived out the Lord in front of you, and it started this chain reaction to where you're at today. So anyone out there listening can think of that, the influence of letting God live in your life, putting the Sermon on the Mount to practice, how it has an impact at school, at work, and in our families. The other thing we want to remember is how you read the scriptures, even from a skeptic standpoint, but how they spoke to you, especially the Sermon on the Mount. And so all of us, as we are dealing with friends that may not be believers, we want to point them toward the Lord. And as you say, the father-in-law, being a Bible translator.
Stanley Morris. Yeah.
And so we see that it's important for all of us to have answers, to be prepared. We may not have all the answers, but it's important to be prepared to answer some of these questions, isn't it? So this is great.
Yeah, It was such a amazing transition, Eddie, and also when it comes to talking to people that are non-believers, our atheist friends, I would say that in my process, I had questions, of course. Is the God of the Old Testament the same one? It doesn't seem many questions with Joshua killing everyone and all these questions that, why people die this way, all of these questions. Without Christ,
right,
the best thing one can do in order to talk about Christ is actually not talking, but living life the way he did. There's no testament like that one. Now, of course, when it comes to answering questions, this is actually a thought that I have. In this secular world,
right,
church numbers are going down. There are many reasons for this. One of them, and this is one of the most important ones, is because the church needs to start going out to forums, talking without fear about their world perspective.
Yes.
This is not happening. And when I talk to friends about this, you think, the pastor. No, the pastor is taking care of 800 hearts.
Right.
People calling him, or at 5 a.m.
Right, with a sickness or...
That is, there must be a new position at churches. Like there's a person that is an expert on culture engagement, a person that knows how to engage with these questions, because people think that churchgoers, followers of Christ, Christians all around the world, they don't have answers.
Right.
But the fact that a person doesn't have an answer doesn't mean that there's no answer at all. That is very important, and answers are there. But it's this idea of now in culture, something that is happening. This is, I don't know whose fault is this, but the word tolerance has changed its meaning. In the past, tolerance coming from Latin, tolerare, that means that say what you want to say, even if I don't like it, but you have the right to say it in public, so I need to tolerate that. Nowadays, it has changed. It's don't say what you think. Say things that that I'm going to like, and let's leave it there. That's the end of all discussion. That is so dangerous, but not only for Christians, for non-Christians, for everyone. You just need to open a history book and read what happens when in societies people stop talking.
Yes. So that gets us to the ask and wonder that you're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you come back and we're going to talk about that, because what you're doing with ask and wonder, what you're really saying is every Christian needs to be equipped. They need to think about these issues and to be prepared to talk to their families and talk to their friends. And so let's have you back and let's talk about that some more, because it sounds like you did that with Rebecca and you did that with her dad, and that led us to where you're at today. But it's something that's not happening in our culture today, and we need to do it. Thank you, Pedro, for coming in today.
Thank you, Eddie.
We're going to have you back again really soon, okay?
Okay.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. God
You
bless
bet.
you too.